Hi there, Cindy Benson here, dogs and goats behind me. Has there ever been a time as an LGD owner with livestock where something happened, maybe happened fast, and as you play it back, you wonder if you did the right thing, you could have done something differently? How would you know? Um, this little video will give you some tools for that. Hope you enjoy it. We're going to start with who we have. So, Kim, you had kind of biggish questions for me. And things that I'm really looking forward to. And I may decide that you and I need a private session so that I can really look at your map and ask you questions and whatnot. I want to take a shot at your incident. Is it okay if I read this?
Sure.
People? So she sent me, she is eloquent, this woman. She writes beautifully and it's really cool. And I like long emails because they have enough information. So being wordy works for me. She says, this is what it says. The incident that had me so upset was Friday morning. I was in the pasture with the dogs and goats. Goats decided to go back to the barn to finish their breakfast. As goats do, they ran really fast like a race. The dogs took off after them, but were running way too fast, so I yelled, "Easy, easy," in a calm voice. They did not slow down. I'm sure that is no surprise to you. Looking backwards over this, of course they wouldn't slow down. I knew Beth was running faster than she should be. She then chased one of the goats up a rock pile and then took a swipe at it. And I'm thinking you meant her front foot and not her mouth.
Yes.
Okay. He was fine and just got out of her way. He wasn't scared and walked over and ate his breakfast a few feet from her as if nothing happened. That's a lot of information for you because the livestock know how tenuous their relationship is with dogs, and a little bobble by a dog that mostly feels like a safe thing, a swipe like that is not going to set them off to a panic like a dog or like goats that are minimally harassed or don't trust the dog. So and you don't always know, because if everybody's just hanging out, you can't take the temperature of things as easily because nothing's happening, right? So you should be comforted by that goat's quick recovery and the fact that he immediately felt hungry again and went and took care of it. So that's a really good sign. Being so caught off guard in the middle of it, I yelled at Beth, I know. Now, you're so cute. You people, if you have me up on any kind of a pedestal, you need to get over that right now, because it'll be a God almighty crash one of these days if you don't. If you think that I walk out there and I don't blow it and yell at a dog or two and then beat myself up for having done so and, all that stuff, you are oh so wrong. And what I know about mistakes is make them short, kiss and make up, learn from it, and go forward. Anytime that you spend, I guess reflecting on that you blew it, maybe, but also it's easy for people to think that it's a bigger crash than it actually is. And so I'm glad that you're checking in about that, because sometimes yelling at a dog is a speed bump for a dog and not a train wreck, because they're not paying a lot of attention to you anyway, and they love you anyway, and you have a huge trust bank account, and it can be viewed as just your problem. If a dog is focused on something enough, they may not even hear you yell at them. So if you yelled and that dog dropped to the ground with big eyes, that's a lot of mistake to clean up, and then you go and you work on that. If the dog doesn't seem very impacted by it, you just learned that it wasn't very effective, and so you go on to something else. So I don't know what you saw, but that's what I look at is, okay, I reflect on that, I blew it. How did it impact the dog? Was the dog, was it a meltdown? Was it a little? Did the dog actually notice? A lot of times they don't, and I just file it away for, don't do that again. You know better. How many dogs, and all that stuff. And the fact is, I'm going to do it again because that's what people do. So knowing how to forgive yourself for not being perfect is pretty important, and it's a good thing to get coaching from each other about, because all of us as humans that care so much enough to be here really care about that sort of thing. So I commend you, but I bet you that you felt worse about it than Beth did. She has never chased them before. She certainly has never swiped her paw at them. I was so upset both at her and at myself for yelling at her. My only excuse for her actions is that there are a lot of barn swallow fledglings coming out of her nest and falling into the barnyard. Then they have no place to go and they can't really fly. She had one of them earlier and was carrying it around and keeping close tabs on it. My hope is that she was running back to them away from the bird. Can you take another look at that from a shaping standpoint and tell me if you really believe that still?
I believe that she was running back for the bird.
Yeah. So you have an immediate antecedent, you have a behavior, and you have a consequence. What you did was go to, oh, what's the word? You know, I'm in this geeky course right now, so you guys are stuck with me in my geeky brain. Distant antecedents, which is that there's things that you know that precede the antecedent right in front of you and the behavior right in front of you, and they definitely influence what's happening in front of you to a degree because they're in the dog's brain. But making a judgment about how much of that to bring in is something to be careful about. I think that when I read that, I read it 3 times and I thought, where's the sentence that I missed about how swiping a goat has anything to do with a bird? And you're talking about, you have taken a look at maybe her greater sensitivity to movement in the area. It could have contributed. And thinking about it is one thing, but I think I would back way off and I would look at what is immediately in front of me and what the dog did right then and what I could do right then, keeping the other stuff in the back of my mind, because it's not, it can be like you have an ABC situation and then you have the anecdotal part of it that people bring into it. And that stuff will get in the way of you setting up a different antecedent and a different behavior and consequence. You don't look happy. Tell me what you're thinking.
I'm just not, I couldn't stop her because they all ran so fast. Like ideally, I would be someplace where I could put myself in between her and the goats.
Okay, so those are all things that you play in the back of your mind and you wish and you know, you're weighing and all that stuff. But in real time, a behavior that's already happened is already there. And so whether she would do it other times, whether whatever, you know, those are all, that's all distant antecedent stuff. And it's things that as a person, we want to suss out and try to figure out, in part to know how to get ahead of it so that these things don't happen again. But in real time, you look at carefully at what happened just before she swiped at the goat and what happened just after, and because what happened just after, the consequence for when she swiped is the antecedent for the next behavior. So that's the one that you have an ability to influence. The one that already happened is behind you. Seeing something happen gives you the starting point for changing the behavior going forward. And that's where you need to be, especially in a time where all hell broke loose. You know, the dogs are moving fast, the goats are moving fast. None of it is the way it's supposed to go. You know, in your head that this is not normal, this is not okay, this is not cool. Even if nobody's dying, you know, there's a little bit of desperation and like, wait a minute, everybody hold still, stop. It's really important, particularly in those times, to just make it very small. Dog's paw did this, goat did this. Whatever you do next is the starting place for the dog's next behavior.
So I messed up totally. I was like, what?
No, stop that. Would you please stop that? Stop that.
I guess I don't know. I mean, I should have just totally distracted her and done something else and got her. No, I'm not even
gonna talk to you if you're gonna do this guilt thing. I'm not, because it does not serve you. So could you have done something differently? Yes. Could I do something differently every minute of this time on this ranch, including all the stupid blonde moments that I do? Yes. Learning from that matters, but spending a lot of time about the what ifs is not as valuable to you as slowing it down in your head and go back to the behavior that the dog did that worried you the most and what happened immediately after, and then playing it back in your head. If that happens again, what would you do now? because it's already happened. And I can tell you that you did not screw up the world. You know, and if you hadn't done so much in this course, you wouldn't even know you'd done anything wrong. And the dogs would go about being happy and the goats would be happy. You have a greater understanding now, and a good critical mind, and all that is wonderful. But you want to use those tools to build your skills and empower yourself, rather than all the ways that you wish you'd done it differently, because there's no end to that. And I'm preaching to the choir here, because I have such a hard time with that. And there have been a lot of times here in these Zoom things where you guys have picked me up off the ground because I end up down that rabbit trail. You know, I should have, if a good person would, you know, all this stuff. And it really gets in your way as a trainer, and it gets in your way when you walk back out there with the dogs, because there's that little niggle and sitting on your shoulder. Don't do again what you did the other day, you know. And it's have I made my point?
Yes.
So if I was there, I would take you out to dinner. I would. And we'd look at flowers, and we'd get up, and we'd be strong women again, and we would go on. And I get it. But so tell me now in real time, without looking backwards at anything, dog that you know well swipes at a goat, goat does whatever. What did the dog do, and how could you make the dog have a different choice if you had it all to replay just in that little piece? What could you have done?
I'm not really sure. I think that's my problem. Other than I couldn't distract her fast enough. I mean, I guess immediately afterwards, I could have just pretended that it didn't happen, because she was fine, he was fine, I wasn't fine.
Okay.
Can I just interrupt for a second and
Yes.
ask how old your dog is?
3.
Okay, sorry, I just was curious.
Okay.
That's okay. You know, way back when I was a fantasy person about these Zoom things, I asked people to send me, before they did questions, first dog, how old's the dog, you know, where are you in the course, all that stuff, so that everybody had the background. And nobody's followed through on that, and I'm not organized enough to do it. Kim has 2 adult rescue dogs, and they're still a work in progress because of the rescue part of it, but highly successful. So Kim, back to you. If I see a dog do something that I'm hoping does not escalate into anything else, and my heart's in my throat, and it's like, oh, this is not, you know, I don't want a dog to try to set back livestock generally. So in that moment, distraction's probably what I would do. And if you watched me here on the ranch with young dogs, especially, you might think I'm an absolute fool. Because if I see a dog do something that's fast and I'm not close enough to step right in front of that dog or between the dog and the goat or whatever, I will wave my arms and go, woo, and go like 3 steps. And a dog will turn and look at you like, why are you're not usually behaving that way, right? That can sometimes give you enough eye contact to say, let's go over here. And you may be able to interrupt it. If you can't, then you step in when you can. And you can't add your voice to it to try to stop a dog. Usually you can do it to distract, but you can't tell them not to do what they're doing, for a couple of reasons. One is they don't hear you. And the other is, why would they? You know that verbal is so far down the line about what a dog cares about. And that's very immediately engaging for the dog. I mean, you'd have to have like T-Bone waving it in the air to have any kind of a glance, unless you kind of were novel enough that you got it. A really well-trained dog, maybe, but I tend to not want to count on that stuff, because there's still too great a likelihood that it won't work. And so I want to go with what is likely to work that instant, because in that moment, I have a dog doing something that might become a real problem. If you can't get the dog, then you go step in front of the goat, or you go position yourself as close to the dog as you can. You get the dog's eye contact. You say, well, hello, are you back here? And then you reset the dog's brain. You either walk a different direction, or you walk with her, or you put your hands on her and everything stops, goes back to the barn. You take a deep breath, if she's still engaged in pursuing a goat, like if that was part of what was going to be a sequence of behaviors for her, then you're going to walk the other direction or get a leash, and you're going to interrupt her ability to do it again. You're going to pay attention to all the stuff that was contextual about it, so that if it's the first time a dog does this and it's something that's going to turn into more behaviors, you want to be cognizant of what was true when it started, what time of day, what set it up, in your opinion. I still very much advocate for picking up a cell phone and pointing it on the ground and saying, it's 3 o'clock on a Tuesday, this dog took a swipe. I hope that's the end of it. Done. And just let it be a library or a journal, because it's time stamped. And if you are, there were a lot of times in raising adolescent dogs where especially in the early days, where I got to a point where I started to see a pattern, and I realized that my my whiteboard notes were letting me down. They weren't detailed enough. I didn't have the time of day. I couldn't suss out all the different pieces that might contribute to the probability of this behavior continuing. And so I wish that I had done this kind of thing. And I say point it to the ground because if I'm going to point it at something, I have to think more, and I'm thinking about what anybody's going to see. I don't want to think. I want to pull it out down by my body so that the dog's not looking at something I bring up high, and therefore tie that in to it. And I just want to be quick and dirty and get it in there and then get back to real time. If you can't do it in real time, just do it when you're breathing again. You would do yourself a favor. And if I have questions farther down the line, you can send those things to me, or you can use them for me too. So with the barn swallow thing, I don't have enough information. I would want to know, do they cause her anxiety? Does she spend more time in the barn because of the swallows? When she sees a swallow, does she glance at a goat? Does she position herself in a different place in the barn because of the swallows? Is her behavior different in the daytime than it is at night because swallows are moving at night? All of those things are going to give you information about what she's thinking about with swallows as much as is possible. Drawing. I'm reading. Give me just a sec. She had one and was carrying it around and keeping close tabs on it. So my guess about that is that it's novel and it's a little creature and she's being sweet about it and she has problems. It's a dilemma. There's this little creature. It's not supposed to be here. What do I do about it? She can either stay right there with it or take it with her as she works, which sounds like what she did. When you saw that, what did you do?
Well, I picked it up and moved it.
But it was in her mouth. No?
Well, she put it down.
So you walked up and she set it down?
Oh, this wasn't right after it. This was before. That's why I thought.
When you've seen her with the bird in her mouth before, how has it gotten itself out of her mouth?
She put it down. Yeah.
Okay, she sets it down. When you see that, what do? Like, do you go get the swallow? Do you bring her away from that situation, check in a little bit, then sneak the swallow out?
The first time I just walked over and picked it up and moved it. And then I realized that was probably a bad idea. So after that, I don't know.
Okay. I don't know that it is. And you don't know that it is. What you need to look at to decide whether it was a bad idea is, what did Beth say? So if Beth looked like you're taking away something that's a resource to her or an object of concern, and I would call that a resource, something that she's invested in. And I think that you would have done this. I think you would stop and talk to her and say, check in with her and do some little bit of relationship stuff, at which point you probably would have a little bit of her permission to walk away with that bird. If she didn't do any of that and you walked away with the bird, knowing you, it probably means that it was fine for her that you took it. So that's a little bit like Olga and her chickens and her husband that, took the bird away from the dog. If the dog is upset and tells you that, next time you do that, you're going to pick a different thing. But if you do that in real time, and you're a partner and she knows it and she's either walking along with you or it's just of no consequence or whatever, it's not a wrong choice at all. And if you're wondering if it is, just think about what her body did when you picked up the bird. That's your answer. There's a lot of times that I think that something that I did was just disastrous and the dog blows it off. And it's often hard for me to let go of my little rush of adrenaline disaster instead of backing up and saying, yeah, it might have been bad, could have been bad, maybe it'll be bad next time, but this one time I got away with it, or the dog did, you know, whatever. And what I'm trying to do here is not work you over, and I know you're not feeling that. It's when things are happening fast, when you have questions, you often don't feel powerful and decisive when you're out there. And I want you to have the tools to know when you need to be worried, when it's just information and you're going to be a better trainer the next time. You know, a little bit of a barometer of holy shit, or yeah, we'll change that next time. That's where I was going with this. How do you feel about all that? Did I do you any favors?
Do I what?
Did I do you any favors?
You did, because the whole thing with Beth chasing the goat was they were over it before I even got over to them. They were both over it. So I should have probably just let it go, or done something, you know, said something other than, what are you doing? You know, that was.
But why? What would you have done? There's nothing for you to do. Dogs are fine, goat's fine, Kim's not fine. So it's time for you to take like 5 Zen breaths and reflect on things, you know. And again, I'm right there with you. I'm a professional worrier. And when I look at something happen that's on the edge of, you know, headed down a path, I play all the, oh my gods, before I realize it didn't actually happen today, right now. And I have the ability to change it going forward. So let's just spin this backwards and slow my wheels down and just be right here. Especially as you get to be a better and better trainer and you see all the nuances, you know, having all those layers and having you so aware of them is a bigger responsibility because you see all the bobbles that you would have sped fast before. Okay.